I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful scarf called the Beginner Garter Drop-Stitch Scarf. This is a great project for beginners or advanced knitters alike. I'm going to take you through how to cast on, how to knit, how to do drop stitches, and how to bind off. You will have no questions by the time you reach the end of this video, but you will have a wonderful project that you can show all your friends and tell them that Marley Bird taught you. Why don't you go ahead and get your pattern over on redheart.com. It's called the Beginner Garter Drop-Stitch Scarf. I'll put a link to it right down there in the video notes so you don't have to go searching for it. Gather your materials and we'll get started. You've got the pattern, you've got your materials, and it's time to get started. As you look down here at the scarf pattern, you can see it's really simple. It's a combination of knit stitches, which create the garter, and some elongated stitches right there, which are the drop stitches. And we're going to create those drop stitches by doing yarn overs on our needle, and then on the very next row, dropping those yarn overs off, which will give us this really nice elongated stitch. Yes, we're going to drop stitches on purpose, but they are going to only be the yarn over stitches, none of the knit stitches. Let me show you what I mean by just jumping in. Let's get started. I'm going to move this scarf out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my Red Heart with Love yarn, and I'm going to cast on 26 stitches. And to do that, I'm going to begin with my slip knot. So I put the tail of the yarn in the palm of my hand. I go ahead and I wrap the yarn around my forefinger and my middle finger. And when I come back up, I cross over that wrap, the original wrap. When I rotate my fingers, I'm going to secure that tail right there. Take my other hand, go underneath the front loop and grab the back loop. And when I pull that off, I create a slip knot. Now I'm going to place that slip knot directly onto my needles. And I'm using circular needles today because I find it easier to demonstrate how to do things on the video with circulars, but if you want to use straight needles, you absolutely could do that. So I'm using size 9 circular needles, and I have placed the slip stitch directly, or the slip knot, directly onto my left hand needle, and I'm getting ready to start. We're going to do a knitted cast on. For the knitted cast on, take your right hand needle, go into the stitch, yarn over your needle, come out the stitch, elongate that stitch that's on your right hand needle, and take your left hand needle, swivel around, and scoop up that stitch. I'm going to show you again. You go into the stitch, yarn over your needle, come out the stitch, elongate that stitch by pulling the right hand needle towards you, and you take your left hand needle, swivel around, and scoop at that stitch and place it right back on your left hand needle. So in, around, out, elongate, swivel, and scoop. I'm going to do that with the yarn in my other hand, so that way those of you who are throwers can see how to do it this way as well. It's the same way, I'm just holding the yarn in a different hand. Go into the stitch, yarn over my needle, come out the stitch, elongate, swivel, and scoop. Now I want to make sure I do that swivel and scoop because it places the stitch back onto my left hand needle the way I need it to be. So I swivel and I scoop at that stitch. I go into the same stitch I just created, so I'm always going into the new stitch, come out, swivel, and scoop. In, around, out, elongate, swivel, and scoop. I'm going to do that until I get 26 stitches onto my needle. You now have 26 stitches on your left hand needle that you've cast on, and it's time to do the knit stitch. To do the knit stitch, we're going to go into the stitch just like we were doing before, and we're going to go around our needle and then pop our needle back out that stitch just like before, only this time, instead of elongating that stitch on our right hand needle, we're going to let the stitch we went into on our left hand needle just fall off. So we're going to let it fall off. This new stitch on our right hand needle represents the next row, which is stacked on top of that stitch right there. We carry on by putting our right hand needle into the next stitch on the left hand needle, complete the knit stitch, and off. So in, around, out, let it fall off the left hand needle. in, around, out, off, in, around, out, off, in, around, out, off, in, around, out, off. I'm going to show you with the yarn in my left hand. Again, it's the same motion. I'm just holding the yarn in a different hand. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. You can go ahead and keep repeating these words if you need some sort of help to remember what to do. And just remember, you are going into the stitch, you're wrapping around your needle, you're coming back out that same stitch, and you're pulling that yarn over through that you wrapped around your needle, and then you're letting that left-hand stitch fall off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. As you go along, continue to push the stitches up the left-hand needle, so that way the stitches come up here towards the tapered end of the knitted or of the knitting needle. It'll make it easier for you to go into the stitches. In, around, out, off. 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 When you're all done, you want to make sure that all of your work is flowing down from the needle. You put the stitches with the, or you put the needle with the stitches into your left hand, and you carry on again. So we're going to repeat this row for row 2, 3, and 4. So this was row 1 we just completed. So we have to do 2, 3, and 4, and we'll be ready for row 5, which means we will do double yarn overs. All right, so you have knitted rows 1 through 4, and it's time to do row 5, which is the double yarn over. Super easy. I'm going to show you how to do that. All we're going to do is we're going to knit into the first stitch just like we do regularly. Now we're going to yarn over our right hand needle twice. So we yarn over our needle once, yarn over our needle twice. See how we have 2 loops resting on our right hand needle? I'm going to hang on to those so that they don't go anywhere. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to knit the next stitch. I'm going to do that again. I yarn over the needle once, yarn over the needle twice, and I knit the next stitch. I'm going to do this all the way down the row. I'm going to hold the yarn in my other hand for those of you who need to see it in this hand. It's not my preferred method, but I can do it. So I'm going to yarn over the needle once, yarn over the needle twice, if I can do that. See, there's 2 loops. Hang on to it, go in, and I knit the next stitch. Yarn over the needle once, yarn over the needle twice, go into the next stitch, and knit. What this is doing is I am creating a bunch of extra stitches resting on my needle. So when you get done with the row, when I get done with the row, I'm going to have an extra 2 stitches for every 1 stitch that I am supposed to have because I have these yarn overs. So it's going to look a little crowded, but it will be okay. So these little yarn overs are this easy. You just yarn over your right hand needle twice and then knit the next stitch. On the very next row, we're going to drop these yarn overs off and let them become the elongated drop stitches. So go ahead, finish this row, and then we will do the dropping of the yarn overs. You finished row 5, it's time to go on to row 6, which is where you drop off your yarn overs. But if you look down here, you can see that your work should look something like this. You should have a whole bunch of stitches on there, way more than the original 26. But that's all right, we're going to take care of that right now. Go ahead and put the needle with all the stitches on it into your left hand, and we're going to begin. We go ahead and we knit the first stitch, just like normal. And we come up to where we have our 2 yarn overs. See how they look like just 2 stitches resting onto the needle. There's no stitch underneath that they're attached to. They're just string resting on the needle. We want to take these 2 yarn overs and just drop them off the needle. Just drop them off, okay? So now we're back to the knit stitch. So we go ahead and we knit that stitch, and it's going to be a little sloppy. It's going to feel a little sloppy. That's okay. It'll be just fine at the end of the row, okay? You can move up your stitches as you move along. And now we're back to where we have our 2 yarn overs. So I'm going to drop those off. I'm just letting them fall off, and I knit the next stitch. Back to the yarn overs, I let them fall off, and I knit the next stitch. Once again, it is a little bit loose and it's going to feel sloppy, but it's okay. That's perfectly normal. Drop the next 2 yarn overs, knit the next stitch. So let me hold the yarn over here for those of you who need to see it with the yarn in my right hand. I drop 2 yarn overs, and I go ahead and I knit the next stitch. Drop 2 yarn overs, knit the next stitch. Drop 2 yarn overs, and knit the next stitch. I'm going to carry on with this until I get to the end. I'm going to show you what it looks like, okay? Okay, so I'm at the end of my row 6, and if I just take my yarn, take my project, and kind of pull down on the rows that I've already completed, you can see that those stitches really become elongated and they look really awesome, don't they? They look like the drop stitches of the scarf. The next row says all we're going to do is repeat rows 1 through 6 until we get the length of the scarf we want, and then we go ahead and we repeat rows 1 through 3, and then we have to bind off. So here is what this looks like just past 1 row. Let me pull in a piece that I've already completed past that row so that you can take a look at what it looks like. So this is past that 1 row, obviously. There's my row of drop stitches, and then here's my row of knits. Now let's go ahead and do a knitted bind off, or we're going to bind off knitwise. To bind off knitwise, it's really simple. All you're going to do is go into the stitch and knit 1, knit 2, have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch, and then take your left hand needle off. So you go into the next stitch so that we have 2 stitches on our right hand needle, go into the back stitch with your left hand needle, have it jump up and over that front stitch, remove your left hand needle, and you're back to 1 stitch. You do this all the way down the row, knitting 1 extra stitch after each jump. So you want to get to where you have 2 stitches, back stitch jumps up and over the front stitch, and remove your left hand needle. Knit another stitch, back, jumps up and over the front. What you're doing is you're taking each stitch and you're putting it around the throat of the stitch next to it. So you get this really nice finished look. If I pull in the finished scarf, you can see the nice edge right there, and those are your bind off stitches. Okay, now you know how to make the beginner garter drop stitch scarf. I hope you will run out, grab yourself some With Love yarn, some size 9 needles, get this pattern, and with my help in the video, you can accomplish this wonderful scarf. It's a really fun knit, and it's super wonderful to wear during the winter season. Just throw it around your neck and you are good to go. And there's many, many color options for you, so you can get 1 for each color coat you might have. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as my kids say, please smash that like button and be sure to subscribe to the Marley Bird YouTube channel so that you're up to date whenever there's a new video release, especially one of the My First projects. I'm Marley Bird for redheart.com. Talk to you soon. Bye.